All right, Seth Flowers, thank you for joining us here on today's episode. I was just saying that pre-roll, we were getting into a lot of the weed stuff that I want the audience to hear. So we might as well go ahead and click record. So I already know this is going to be a valuable episode selfishly for me, but for all of our audience, I think it'll be valuable for them as well. So just to go ahead and kick it off, Seth, I'll turn it over to you. Quick intro of who you are, what you do, and anything else that's interesting.
Yeah, I'm Seth Flowers. I joke that I'm a serial entrepreneur. I'm a serial business person. People ask me what my hobbies are, and I tell them business. I love every aspect of serving customers and serving the people around me. Go Big Franchise Consulting really stemmed from several years of working in the franchising industry with multiple brands, and loving the industry, but understanding that it's right for some people and it's not right for some people. And so being able to help people navigate through that process is really my goal, and to help them find the franchise where they can be the most successful for their skills and traits.
Yeah.
I've been in business for over 23 years now. Everything from the corporate world to starting my own business, and sometimes joke that it was like going to Vegas. I threw my money up in there as fast as I humanly possibly could, and learned a lot of valuable mistakes through that process. And then I've helped now over probably 25 businesses and over 170 franchisees develop their processes, their skills to help grow and scale their business, and really fell in love with that end of the business. And so I spent the last 4 years working on the ops side of the franchising industry, with multiple brands, pretty much all in the home services space, but have done some dabbling in the restaurant space as well in the franchise industry. So
awesome. Very cool. Thank you for that background. And there's a lot of different places we can go here, but I'll start with, you talked about being in business as an owner as well, helping others get into business. Talk a little bit about the correlation that you saw with your own skills being a business owner and your previous work as maybe an employee for somebody else. What are some of the things that carried over from your corporate life as an employee into business ownership, and maybe some of the things that didn't?
I think that I realized that I was a good rule follower in the corporate world, but I was also, I didn't like being restricted. I liked caring about the customer. I liked caring about the employees and the teammates that I got to work with, my peers that I got to work with. I love that camaraderie in the corporate world. And I liked following processes that were well developed and there, but I also liked having the ability to pivot. And as the corporate world, as I got higher and higher up in the ladder of the corporate world, and really the business got bigger. When I first started working in the corporate world for the company that I spent most of my career with, we were about $500,000 a year, or $500 million a year business. And so it was a big business, wasn't a small business by any stretch of the imagination. But when I left, it was about a $1.7 billion a year company. And so the growth there, I realized that it was very hard to pivot once the business got that big. And I didn't like that inability to pivot. And so small to medium-sized businesses, we have the ability to pivot, but I loved the structure of a corporate SOPs and corporate resources available. And when I got out of the corporate world, I missed a lot of that stuff. And it's one of the things that I love about the franchising industry is you get the structure, some of those SOPs, some of the camaraderie, some of the peers. You get the ability to scale because you have those resources, but you also are a small business that can pivot. You can make small local changes that can make a difference in your business. And you can't do that a lot of times in corporate world.
It's funny you mentioned that about the corporate world, because I had this realization within the last 24 months, I guess I'll say, but there's, you can grow in a corporate structure, and by no means do I push folks to be entrepreneurs or employees. I think you need to take a self-inventory and figure out who you are. and where you belong in the world. And some of us are not cut out to be business owners, and some of us are not cut out to be employees. But I think at the end of the day, what I realized in the corporate world as I was an employee was no matter how much I complained or, try to make suggestions on how this would further the business, or, hey, we should take on this client because XYZ, even though the solution may fall a little bit outside of our wheelhouse today, no matter what we thought as an employee of where this ship should go, all that is an opinion. And the folks that are pulling the levers are the ones that can take that in and decide to act on it or not. And that for me was probably the biggest thing, because I don't like to fit just into kind of like a cog in a wheel. Like I want to use this brain of mine, right, to think of things and how to be better, and then go and implement it. Not saying that all of my ideas are right. We could go and fail at it. But I just wanted to be able to, the reason I started our junk removal company many years ago was because I wanted to be able to not necessarily own an entire business by myself. I've got a business partner that I started it with, but I wanted to have a seat at that table to help make those decisions and kind of navigate the waters that way. So just interesting that you kind of mentioned that. On the franchise consulting side, can you talk about a little bit your process of how you help potential candidates with discovering themselves, helping, you discover where, the types of brands that would be good for them to maybe look at buying into? What does that process look like when they start engaging with Seth Flowers?
Yeah, a lot of it starts, and this is sometimes harsh for people to hear. Franchising, in order to be successful, you have to be able to follow a process. Franchising is, you're buying a process, you're buying a system. And so in the franchise consulting world, one of the things that I do first and foremost is I start out by guiding you through my process. And if you can't follow that process, I'm not going to set you up for failure. And so one of the very first things I do is I have a 15 to 20 minute get to know you conversation of just, what are you looking for? Do you know much about franchising? Where are you in the process of the franchising? And then I send you a document that is a get to know you, but it's also pretty in depth. It's your net worth, funding availability, interests, things you've done before, all of those things. It takes less than 15 minutes to fill out if you have some of that information available to you. Mm-hmm. But I won't even set up the next step until you send that back to me. And people say, well, that's kind of weird. No, it's following the process. If you won't commit to 15 to 20 minutes to fill out a document, you're probably not going to follow through with a lot of other things. And so that's my first thing. And then I go through an interview process where we look at your interest and your skills and your transferable traits that on what you want to be. Is it passive ownership? Is it day-to-day operationally involved? Are you going to have a partner? And what's their involvement in it? And then we match you up with franchises based on that information. I do have an assessment, and I've been using assessments for over 18 years now to help pick some of those things out if we need to. So if we can't come up with something that really you are interested in based on just a simple conversation, then we will go down the path of using an assessment to kind of pull out some of those transferable skills that you have, communication skills and transferable skills and stuff of that nature, to match you up with some franchises that maybe you're not familiar with. But most of the time during a conversation, we can figure out where we're going to go. And then we just begin the shopping process at that point. Once we narrow those down, and it becomes a feeling and me helping you navigate the system through that. And so, what'd you like about that one? What'd you not like about that one? If anybody that's bought a house, I say it's just like you tell me you have a $750,000 budget. I'm probably going to show you a $700,000 house and an $800,000 house. And we're going to find out where are you willing to give and take a little bit, and what you really like and don't like. Because we may be able to find you a $500,000 house with everything you're looking for.
Right. Totally. So I'm curious, after all of the years that you've been working with folks and placing them with brands, what's the typical, what's the highest success type of person that the profile of person that you tend to see most successful? Is it the midline manager at a corporate America that looks to get into franchising? Is it, a young person just coming out of high school that you happen to connect with that just has an entrepreneurial spirit that goes into franchising. What's that profile look like for you? If there's any sort of, standardization of types of folks that fit well within the franchising world that you've worked with?
It's really all over the board. It's
Yeah.
the problem with it is because their franchising is such a broad spectrum. You can find people that are very well capitalized that are going to be an investor. But if there's one thing that I say makes people successful in franchising, it's the same thing as any business, and that's leadership.
Yeah.
Um, whether or not you're going to be an investor that invests $1 million into a business and you're going to be more of a passive and kind of just guide the business through by hiring leadership inside the business and all of those kinds of things, you got to have leadership.
Yeah.
If you're going to be an owner operator and you're going to run calls on your own and do the things on your own, you got to lead yourself. You got to lead your team. You got to lead your customers. You've got to be a good leader. And so it's funny that you say this because I was at a brand just the other day and somebody asked almost that exact same question: what makes franchisees successful? And
Mm.
every time it came back to is drive, leadership, work ethic, ability to get off the couch.
Mm.
Most people, when they leave a corporate world, they're in a weird state where for the first time they don't have to get up and go to work,
Right.
or else they'll be fired because they're not going to
Mm.
fire themselves.
Yeah.
Which I would say they need to change their mindset because they should fire themselves. If you
Mm.
can't get up off the couch and just because you don't have an appointment, go and do a networking event or go and have a meeting with a vendor or find something to be productive in your business, you probably should fire yourself.
Right. So I just had this conversation earlier today with somebody else, and I'm curious your thoughts on it. But what's because outside looking in as a franchisor, looking to build a brand and bring on franchisees, I'm sure I'm not the only franchisor that's ever been like, hey, I really want to do this the right way. I want to support the franchisees. I want to build a great marketing system. I want my brand just to be the best in the marketplace, but that's not the case. If you ask any franchisee, I'm sure there's good and bad. There's levels of disgruntledness, I guess. And I would go out on a limb and say that even folks that are happy with the franchise they bought into, they still could probably point to areas that are lacking. But like, what are some of the common themes that you see among franchisors that a lot of franchisees tend to go back on and be like, man, I wish the franchisor did this differently, whether that was supporting me in the field or had a better call center or, was able to help me with local marketing better. Any trends that you see that just tend to pop up regardless of the business? Could be home services, retail, whatever.
I think the biggest thing is they listen to their successful franchisees.
Mm-hmm.
And I say that very specifically. Just like with customers, just like in any business atmosphere, you're going to have your bottom 20%. You're going to have your mid-level people that are not that successful. And then you're going to have your overachievers. You're going to have your people that are just stellar.
Mm-hmm.
When I say successful, there's a variety of success in the franchising world. Like if you have somebody that is that mid-level performer in franchising, we always look at revenue. So they're kind of that they're along that average unit value revenue location. But
Yeah.
that's where they want to be. That's a successful location. If
Yeah.
that owner is wanting to be there, they're not wanting to build an enterprise. They're not wanting to be this crazy successful, chasing their tail every day, all of those kinds of things person.
Yeah.
That's a successful franchisee because they are where they want to be. And so franchisors that I've seen really be successful listen to their successful franchisees. What worked for them, what's working for them, what's not working for them, how can we improve, how can we get better? And they take those steps just as you would as a franchisee side of things. When I'm running my day-to-day business, if I listen to my customers and especially my repeat customers are my good, really valuable customers, all of a sudden I'm going to improve myself as a business owner. And so even if I get a 4-star Google review, if I'll listen and I'll respond and I'll have a conversation with those people, then great. If they're an unreasonable customer or an unprofitable customer, maybe we just move past.
Right. What are some of the brands or concepts that intrigue you the most today as you're looking at franchise systems that you could start to point your candidates to? Are there any like themes? Or, I mean, feel free to drop names if you want. You certainly don't have to. But what are some of the concepts and industries that you're seeing that are really awesome?
I'm huge in the home services world. It's where I cut my teeth. I love home services. I love home services that you can dabble in light commercial. So I'll tell you, I've worked with a brand called Bloom and Blinds for a long time. You can do commercial. There's some repair aspects of it. There is repeat business because you can work with property managers. You can work with apartments. You can do a lot of different things in that window coverings world. And yet you get to work with some high-end customers in the residential space. So you get to sell some shutters and motorization and stuff of that nature. I love that. I love painting concepts. It's very subcontractor driven, but really the home services world, the reason I like it the most is because it's not going away. People don't want to do things, and everybody says, hey, when you have a recession, the home services model may get hit. No, it won't. People are working multiple jobs. They have less time to do stuff around their house than they do when things are actually going well. And so the people that were going to hire you anyways are going to hire you. And the people that need you are going to hire you. And so that's a great space that's there. The other one is straight B2B concepts. And I say that specifically because it's opposite ends of the spectrum. If you have a business owner that doesn't like dealing with consumers, so if I'm talking to you and you come to me and we talk and you're not the waiter type, you're not a bartender, you didn't like dealing with customers to that aspect, I'm going to steer you completely towards B2B because home services is not your world. Home services, consumers, restaurants, all of those things, those customers need their hands held. They like having their hands held. And if you don't like doing that, then don't go into that world because you're not going to have a lot of fun doing it. Yeah. But you could go into recruiting or cost mitigation or even some like industrial retail spaces and stuff of that nature where you could just smash it out of the park because that's going to be a much more transactional situation.
Yeah, those are great points. Very much so. I'm the type of person actually, like if you met me and walked me through your process, you would probably steer me in that towards the B2B spot, even though I'm more in the home services. But you're absolutely right. Your brand is what it hits people in the face every single day on every single job as a homeowner. Like that's so the pieces you put in place, specifically out in the fields, and I've heard of Bloom and Blinds. I've heard amazing things about them. It's the people that you have in the field interacting with the customers that help to tell the brand story, and hopefully that's a positive one. On the franchisor side, what can we do systematically when running such a large ecosystem of business owners and vendor partners and everything along those lines? What can we do to set ourselves up for if you desire to have any sort of an exit, a private equity exit or whatever else at some point in the future? What are those types of firms looking at in franchise systems and franchisors when they put a 10x multiple on this brand versus a 3x multiple on that one? What are some of those things that those PE firms are looking at with different brands that make one much more valuable to them than the other?
A lot of it is leadership that is going to be coming along with the brand. And so, do I have to do a lot to continue what growth we've seen? But really, it comes down to training. So systematic training that's in place that can be duplicated over and over again. I see it all the time with training facilities where it's a good, solid training program that is run by employees. And so the PE firm can come in and they can buy it, and they don't have to skip a beat. The wheel is just going to continue to turn. And then it's also data. PE firms, most people don't realize PE firms, when they're making these acquisitions, they're buying data. They're buying customer bases. They're buying information to go into their other businesses. And so they're buying additional layers of value to their other entities that they already own. And so if you keep good data points and you keep good customer retention dashboards and market trends, the marketing realm is one of the keys. Why are people buying what they're buying? That's the type of data that a lot of these PE firms are looking for to get when they come into your business is, is it going to continue to operate the way it's been operating? Or I'll just use you, Davis. If a PE firm is going to buy your company and you're leaving in 2 years, the multiple won't be as high because I know I'm going to have to replace you if your business requires you to be in it every single day.
Yeah, right. Set up those systems. It's a theme that I've heard many times over. In your personal process, Seth, with trying to place candidates with brands, how do you go to market, in your market being the individual? How do you go and find people, or do you have a lot of inbound candidates reaching out to you saying, hey, Seth, I'd love to work with you and find a franchise brand? I'm sure you get a little bit of both, but specifically, how do you generate leads of people that you potentially end up working with and placing with brands?
A lot of it is still networking and speaking. It's doing things like this right here and just getting out there and being in front of businesses. I was talking to a commercial banker last week, and I said, commercial banking is one of those weird things that most standard commercial bankers can't fund startup businesses. It's specialized. That is a very niche market. And so they have people come to them all the time that go, hey, I'd like to start a business, but I don't have the $250,000 that it's going to take to do it. Yeah. Well, the great part about me and a franchise consultant is we do have partners, and we have lending arms, and we have things that we can set you up on where we can get you the funding as long as you have good credit. You've got some assets that people can look at and say, oh yeah, they've been good with money throughout historical. We can find those things for you. And so a lot of my business comes from that referral of, I joke all the time, it doesn't mean you're in business, but when you've been in business, people come to you and go, you're sitting down having coffee or you're having lunch with a friend, and they go, my wife and I, my husband and I have been talking about starting our own business, but I don't know where to start. Well, you can start by talking to somebody like me because we really can help you walk through that process.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I think, for being on my side of the fence, I've seen, and I've talked with a number of folks that, candidly, Seth, don't look fondly on consultants because of whatever reason. And I'm like, maybe this is because I've gone through the home buying process a couple of times myself. And I'm like, man, I would never do this without an agent involved, without a realtor. Yep. And maybe it's because I come from sales and I understand the legwork involved of, getting parties together and working through solutions and building a solution and finding a fit and reviewing a contract and all of this stuff involved. It's like buying a house. And so I look at your world as kind of the same, like and you don't even get paid until you place somebody, right? It's not like you're on retainer. It's not like you're getting paid hourly or not on a salary. Like your livelihood rests on how many folks you're able to successfully place at these brands. And beyond that, your business will dry up if you place too many folks with brands where they fail, right? That's the other piece of your world that I think is lost a little bit in translation with folks.
But it's also the same. You have to do your due diligence and be in a good feel with your consultant as well. I see a lot of people are getting into franchise consulting right now because it seems like an easy business. I spend a lot of hours studying brands. I spend a lot of hours studying business as a whole. and talking with other industries and other business owners and franchisors. And there's a lot of franchise consultants that don't do that. And so just like in the real estate world, there's realtors that study the MLS and study market trends and schools and industries moving into town and all of that kind of stuff. It's the same thing in franchise consulting. You just have to find the good ones and the bad ones and weed them out and figure out who you need to work with.
Yeah, it's very similar now that you mentioned, now you talk through it that way. That, I mean, my dad was a financial advisor, a stockbroker for 35 years. And same thing. I mean, he made his money not on retainer. He made it on the success that he was able to build your portfolio to. And so for that, his job was to know more about these businesses than his clients did, because that's why they engaged him. They wanted to outsource the financial performance of their portfolio to somebody that was in it every day. And so you obviously have, even in that space, you have folks that kind of just, they show up 9 to 5, they do their job, they make their calls, they put your money to work for you and hope for the best. And maybe they get you 4, 5, 6% returns. And then you've got the other folks that knock it out of the park and they're getting 11, 12, 15, 20% returns on, 80% of your portfolio. So sidebar there, I guess. And we'll start to kind of wrap it up here, Seth, but what do folks need to know about the franchise space before getting into it? What does a candidate need to know if they come and talk to you and you've studied all these brands and you guys are starting to get to know each other? What do they need to know about moving away from maybe corporate job to getting into this franchise thing?
It's going to bring you more joy than you think it will, and it will be harder than you think it will be. It's the ups are up, and the toughness and the grit and the grime are as hard as you've ever put into it. So some of me and my friends that were at a business networking deal a couple of weeks ago were talking about, if you come to me, I'm probably going to give you a rude awakening. If you say, I want to start my own business so that I have complete freedom and flexibility. Well, I hate to tell you, but you actually probably have more freedom and flexibility working in your 9 to 5 or your 8 to 5, or even if you work 8 to 6 because you just stretch it out. You probably have more freedom and flexibility because you've got PTO, you've got a 401k, you've got all of these types of things that are in. And at the end of the day, when you own your own business, you've got you and your family. And that's what you've got. And yes, can I get up on a Friday and decide not to go to work and go play a game of golf and not have to answer to anybody? Yeah, I can. The facts are, though, most of the time I don't, because I know if I do, my entire business may stop. And so I actually have a little bit less flexibility and freedom because I'm in it for and I'll say this to wrap up, and this is something I tell a lot of first-time business owners that are going to grow a team, is most people have heard the saying of the weight of the crown is heavy. Until I owned my own business, I never understood the pressure of other people's families on my shoulder. And when they're relying on you and your business to pay their mortgage and to pay their car payments and to pay for their kids' college and to pay for dinner on their table, that's a lot. Yeah. But at the same time, when you see that life-changing situation where you can provide a great culture, where you can have a Christmas party at the end of the year and get their family, their spouse telling you how they've loved working with you and for you more than they've ever loved working for anywhere else and anywhere, all the pressure is worth it. Yeah. But it's a lot. And so just be prepared for that as you enter into business. But at the same time, the highs are high and the work to get there is really hard. Yeah. But it's if you can get to hear joy-wise working for somebody else, just know there's this level working for yourself and creating opportunities for others that is it's a true high. It really is.
You forgot the weekends. As an employee, you get the weekends off, which I don't know that I've seen. I don't know that I've seen a weekend in many, many years, but you know,
Yeah.
this has all been great stuff. I'll end with this last question. We typically like to ask folks if you could go back to your younger days, whenever that was, getting out of school, first starting your own business, or whenever that was, 5 years ago, and do anything different, what would you do? But I'd like to tweak that a little bit and say, what would you do again? What would you double down on again in your younger days? If there's one thing or a few things that you could point to be like, I really like that I did this, and I'd actually go back and spend even more time doing this, what would that be?
Man, that's a good question. The finding more mentors.
Hmm.
I had some really, really good mentors. I was a young business manager and business leader. Um, and some of them are still dear friends of mine to this day. And I would find more of those and I would intentionally search out more of those.
Yeah.
I think young people are afraid to ask successful people for time because they don't know what to do with that time. But
Hmm.
if you ask successful business people, I think most of them want to find ways to add value to you um,
Yeah.
if you're just willing to listen and be prepared.
Hmm.
Um, I would love to see young people walk up to more of us and say, "Hey, can I have 20 minutes of your time where you ask me questions like you just asked?"
Yeah.
Um,
I
and
agree.
I think that would change our business environment a lot.
Yeah.
But I will tell you, I would go into business for myself a lot younger than I did.
Mm.
I I was I was afraid of finances when I was a kid because my family didn't talk about finances,
Yeah.
and so I was afraid of finances. Now
Yeah.
today, man, I wish I had taken more risk younger
Yeah.
because the risks are a whole lot heavier the older
Yeah.
you get and the more family around you get and the more
Totally.
dependent on people you get. And
Yeah.
so I would definitely take a lot more risk younger than I did. Now that I'm taking them older and they're a lot riskier.
Yeah. I always come back to that one as well. When people ask me that question, I'm like, man, I would just start. I would start way sooner. I would just start something. I don't care, if you fail at it. I'd prefer to fail, quite frankly. I mean, just to get the learning curve out of the way. I think that's a build up, and most folks, including me, that's like, oh, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to do this, and it's just like just start. And that could start with you learning about an industry. It doesn't necessarily have to mean you go and set up an LLC and get an EIN and all that stuff. Just learn start the learning process. That's what I always tell folks. And
Well,
then,
and
yeah,
and just think about it in the way of this. Just if you're young right now and you're listening to this YouTube and stuff of that nature, I will tell you right now, if you think about one thing, every penny you spend should be doing one of two things: making you money
hmm,
or making you healthy.
yeah,
If it doesn't do one of those two things, you shouldn't be spending your money on it
right,
because you can spend money to get passive income that can then pay for vacations and cars and all of
yeah,
those types of things later on down the road. But
yeah,
as a young person, quit spending money on junk and start spending money on stuff that makes you money.
yeah. Good stuff. It's a great place to end it, Seth. I appreciate the time, man. This was great and super valuable for me. Like I said, to start the show individually, but I'm sure the audience will glean some insights here as well. At least I hope they do. And if anybody wants to go and find you, Seth, what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
They can go to Go Big Franchise Consulting and find me anytime or search me on LinkedIn at Seth Martin Flowers and track me down. I'd love to hear from you.
Awesome, good stuff, Seth. Thank you again.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it, Davis.